Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Intuitive Mind Solutions podcast. I'm Dr. Matt Bresky, and I'm here for an interview we're having today with two special guests, and I'm co-hosting with Joshua Baudouins and Dr. Lorraine. Today, we are very excited to have two amazing people that are out in the world, in the trenches, really changing lives in real time, every day, every week, all year long, and it is quite an inspiration to see how their programs have evolved since the first time I met them. Because when I first met them, they were on the beginning journey, and wow, what an amazing thing to be able to see. And I'm really excited to have them on this interview. And right now, today, we have Dr. Monique Andrews and Dr. Tamara MacIntyre, and they are the founders of the Prana Foundation. So, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Matthew.
Yeah.
And I got your names right.
Absolutely.
I almost switched you up and said, Monique, I almost switched your first and last names up either way.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to let you guys kind of take over a little bit and tell us a little bit about your programs. What we do here at the Intuitive Mind Solutions, in the beginning of our show, we want to know a little bit about what you guys are up to, and just to give a little bit of space for you to share your story a little bit so more people can hear about it. We're just here to support what everybody out there in the world is doing that is involving helping people. It's a really simple principle. And so we'll let you guys take over.
Sure, yeah, and maybe just to give you a little bit of our history, we're in practice together in Ottawa, Canada for about 13 years, going all the way back to early 2001. And then we left practice and we were teaching at a chiropractic college and working as administrators there for about 6 years. And then we recently moved back to Canada and we started the Prana Foundation, which, for us, having been through the trenches of practice, been through, the complicated labyrinth of education, and we could really see some gaps especially for new graduates and students entering the profession. And so we created the Prana Foundation to bridge those gaps. And really it's a nonprofit service organization that is, our idea was to create a wealth of resources and an engaged, supportive community for chiropractors that really was a safe space for them to heal and grow and transition into chiropractic, into their profession. And so I guess now you could sort of say that we're kind of like shepherds for new graduates and docs getting started. And we have a whole host of programs that range from educational programs like Dr. Mac's clinical mentorship, my patient education and science program called Dr. Mo Knows. We run retreats. We do small group mentorship that's really focused on both personal and professional development. And something that we always say is,
who you are as a person precedes who you are as a chiropractor. And so ultimately, our programs are really centered at meeting new docs and students where they're at and helping them just bring out their most authentic expression and create a practice that they design with that thoughtfulness in mind, so that they're not just taking a model that's actually not them, or they're not going into an environment where they haven't identified what ultimately they're hoping and expecting to get out of that next piece of their professional career. And so our individual sort of interests and expertise, Monique's is really about understanding what's happening with the science and teaching it and making it really accessible, but also making sure that the research is part of the patient education component and understanding for chiropractors. And for me, my expertise is far more in the clinical world. And what I found is there's a whole lot of young doctors that don't actually have a mentor to help talk through the clinical aspect of what they're doing. And, so much focus on coaching really is, sharing of a business skill set. And most of our young new docs are not motivated by that success model and money. They want to really create an experience that's valuable to them and also be of service to others. And so I really am functioning more in that clinical mentorship guide, and the programs that I've been creating are really about the consciousness of integrating who you are as the clinician, who you are as a person, and designing that experience so that we don't see this high turnover or docs ending up in the wrong practices with the wrong model because they haven't actually really dug a little bit deeper into what they're looking for. So our community, so often, the community that we've really built in the Prana Foundation is experienced docs who, even just recently one said, that they were looking to restore their faith in chiropractic. And so we're getting it, we're really able to create a community of like-minded individuals who really understand that while we're physical beings, we are also energetic and spiritual beings first. And, chiropractic in just a neuromusculoskeletal model or a skeletal model, depending on where you are or where you practice, is a little bit more limiting than a lot of us know to be the case when we talk about healing. And so we have those conversations as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where you came up with the name, the Prana Foundation then.
We've always been Prana, actually.
When we were in practice, we were the Prana Group.
Mm-hmm.
And we chose that word long before it was popular and well known. So
Okay.
yeah, we chose it before yoga was really what it was, and the conversation associated with breath, and as it relates to healing, as it relates to healing trauma, as it relates to the neurology of trauma, none of that was really on the map 20 years ago. And so it just really made sense. Like we started early on, we were Prana Chiropractic Center, and then we quickly changed it to the Prana Group. And so it just was a natural transition as we grew, and as our vision grew.
We just can't shake that idea that, there's this incredible life force that drives us from the moment of conception until we die and on beyond that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it's been our handle for a really long time.
Yeah, when I saw that you guys had that as your name and stuff, I was like, instantly, I says, I need to get connected with them and see how we can eventually have a super cool working relationship, because I think we're in total alignment for what we're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sort of taking what you guys are doing with the chiropractic, and we're doing it more at a global level to get more continuity between people to come up kind of sort of with what I call the collective perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And without having the diversity, you can't have the unity, because you got to embrace that aspect of it. And I learned recently about what the prana healing is all about, because I was at a seminar a while back and I was doing some things that I just intuitively did. And one of the doctors at the seminar, she's like, "Are you doing pranic healing?"
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "What exactly is that?" And then I looked into it a little more. I was like, "Well, yeah, I guess I am."
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it was totally cool to have you guys when we were in Vancouver, when I got to meet you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I did a walk and talk with Monique
Mm-hmm.
a little bit, and she put me back on my path within 3 minutes.
Wow, wish I could remember that conversation.
Yeah. You didn't even say, you didn't even say much. I think I was talking the whole time, and then you just had a few little bits, and then I was like, "Yeah, okay, yep, that's spot on."
I think a lot of times that's what mentorship is about. It's really about holding space for people and then just making little slight corrections or suggestions to allow them to unfold, right? For us, for the Prana Foundation, it's really about developing the authentic person. It's not about trying to fit anybody into a mold or making, suggestions to do this, do that. It's like, who are you? Because we are most powerful when we are 100% ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we're trying to help facilitate, is for people to grow into the fullest expression of who they are.
I think,
Amen.
Yeah, I mean, I think the chiropractic profession in particular, because we work the way we do with the human frame, especially if we have empathic and are intuitive, and there's that aspect of what we do as facilitators, I think we're part of that conversation. I mean, to express who we are, that's what we're here for, is to be the best possible versions of ourselves. And in chiropractic, so much has been about a formulaic kind of approach or a limited version of what that actually looks like. And so for us, mentoring is really about just allowing all the diversity that we are as human beings express themselves within a profession that we love. So mentoring is just holding that space, like Dr. Mo said.
And I think I've noticed that in my own, I've been a chiropractor 12 years, my own experience, when you're around other colleagues and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
getting that courage to be yourself
Mm-hmm.
is the key, I think. And that's amazing that what you guys are doing, and you're giving the students that courage to be who they are and not fit into that mold. And that's the scary thing, because you feel alone in the beginning.
Well, and that's the whole point, is for it not to be about isolation, and to realize, I mean, that's, when Monique says shepherding, we really feel strongly about, they've just completed their coursework, and where are they going to go next to discover that next piece of themselves as the doctor? It's not just about finding the logistics, or the circumstance that fits the budget or is in the location. It's being really mindful that this is your journey, but you're not sacrificing yourself in that process. And it's really, really important to have community and connectedness with somebody of like mind who's there and can mirror for you and support you, not give you the answers, but actually just, draw those out, and, not be attached to how that all comes together, but be connected to you in your own process. And I think, that first sort of 3-5 years out of practice is a whole lot of growth and discovery and figuring out how this is going to play out for you. And you're right, it demands enormous amounts of bravery and courage to even just give yourself the voice, especially when you're doing more tonal work, when you're doing things that are
not mainstream,
and not, when you're having to continually feel like you're needing to justify why you're doing what you're doing, and you're just really hoping the public is going to embrace that form of facilitation, and so I think we really want them starting in that space of having confidence and feeling brave and feeling courageous and doing it exactly as they wish to do it, and not feel from the very beginning that they need to be put into a box that somebody else has created.
I think I need to be in your program.
Everybody is welcome.
Yeah.
So this will lead to a question I think Josh had about what he's up to with his work. And Josh.
Yeah, I'm at the moment I'm a counselor in practical psychology, but I'm studying energetic therapy. But with all the answers I already got, we kind of killed the first question. Luckily, I have 3. So the first question was, what is your view on energy therapy? But I don't think I still need an answer on that. The second question is, what does it do for the nervous system? Because you're neurologists, I've seen on the internet. That's correct?
Mm-hmm. We both have degrees in neuroscience. Yes.
Yeah, neuroscience. So, what does the prana or the energetic therapy do for the nervous system?
Yeah, I think that from a tangible perspective, that has not yet been clearly elucidated in sort of conventional scientific terms. I think if we look more to what's happening in quantum physics and on a quantum level, we can all agree, and in fact, it has been substantiated, that the body emits an electromagnetic energy. And that is something that's actually quantifiable.
Mm-hmm.
And we know from studies that look at HRV that if we can impact the body's coherence, one person, if we can even impact our own body's coherence, that has a quantifiable impact on the coherence of the energetic, tone of the people around us. And in conventional terms, the average person, even I would say, the allopathic scientist really doesn't appreciate or understand what that means. And in fact, they would probably even argue that energy stuff is all rubbish. And I think there couldn't actually be a more uneducated statement than to say it doesn't exist. Because we do know that there's a quantifiable energy that the body emits. We do know that one person's energy can actually impact another's.
We also know, even, if you go back many years at this point, James Oshman did a really great job in really just describing what we know in terms of even just how far energy radiates from the human frame, that it can be measurable, that it has certain patterns. And yes, that another human being's energy, that we connect in that way, that, that monks can emit, that, we know a lot of these things. And I think the general public does, but, the history of conventional allopathic medicine, sort of shut down any of that energetic work, which was actually, if you look into the history, was part of their history. They just shut it down. And, and here we are in a solely, surgical or biochemical intervention that's actually completely, sort of eliminated another whole aspect of how we exist cellularly as human beings.
I don't know if we answered your question. I would say this. From a medical perspective, what impact does one person's have on another person's neurology has not clearly been identified, but from a purely energetic, quantifiable analysis, we do know that one person's electromagnetic radiation can have a positive or a negative influence on another's. That if one person has a high coherence, that can have an effect of raising the coherence of another human.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where we perhaps can add most value.
Yeah, thank you. The thing is, what I'm doing is multiple things. We're talking about cranial sacral therapy,
Mm-hmm.
energy therapy, electroacupuncture,
Yes.
and stuff like that. And what I see in my treatments when I go to somebody and they have a treatment is that afterwards they all say that it was good, and they all say they're relaxed, and they all say they're tired and they want to go to bed. So that, for me, I think what I see the most thing is getting the body out of the fight-flight mode. And that's a very important thing these days because we're all in it, and we're all in it too long. So that for me is already the proof. And then, as I'm doing the course, I'm reading a lot of the stuff about the Grillian photography and
Yes.
diacinine paint, and how it's been caught, how the body gives this light that cannot be seen with the normal eye. So at this point, I'm focusing on fire cupping, meridians, so the electroacupuncture, craniosacral therapy, and I have a last question. Do you have a suggestion for me where to focus the most on neurologically? Is it like craniosacral? Is it fire cupping? Is it the meridians, or energy therapy?
Are you familiar with James Oshman's book, Energy Medicine?
No, sorry.
This is a reference. I'll share it with you. So he wrote this book. I mean, it's probably about 20 years old now, and it was specifically for those like us in a healing realm, in a facilitator's role. And he does a really, really great job of actually delineating sort of what therapies tap into which, if I said, I'm going to use the word maps, it's what I use when I'm talking to patients. It's like there are different ways to communicate with the human frame with its energy. And different modalities actually resonate with different individuals. So sometimes it's not about the amalgamation of all modalities within the same care plan or care sequence within a patient, but it's knowing about which modality to target with which individual. And that's based on sort of which communication pathway their body is able to accept. So with craniosacral therapy, you're looking at movement of cerebral spinal fluid. You're talking about nourishing and bathing the nervous system. You're looking at the rhythms within that craniosacral, rhythm that you're tapping into, versus when you look at meridians or TCM and acupuncture, they have their own maps. But one of the things that, that is also sort of more common knowledge is that those maps or those pathways that are used don't actually, they would say, are not neurological pathways. That while they may impact the nervous system, that actually is not the language that they're speaking. It would be the in medical terms, the side effect; in our terms, an effect, but it's indirect. And so TCM has an indirect impact to the nervous system and balancing that sympathetic parasympathetic tone. Craniosacral is actually a different modality in terms of how you're tapping in. And then you look at things that, are now more considered like manual neuroscience that are much more focused on polyvagal trauma type work. And that those exercises actually use things like eye movement. And it's a modality that works a different way. So I would say from a clinician's perspective, what I would say to you is this, is I would say you've chosen very distinctly different ways and languages to speak to whoever is on your table. I think that the clinical skill and gift is choosing the right thing for the right person in the right time. And that's actually the clinician's, like what I would say, that's where I would say is the gifts we grow into, is the choice in the languages we speak to an individual based on where they're at, what you're, what even just what is coming really strongly through for you. How much, I would say for me, it's like, how much am I going to do more direct mechanical communication to an individual versus how much am I going to really read their subluxation tracts through like a BGI model? And am I going to integrate first? What am I going to do next? And that's really, I would say to you as the clinician, learn as much as you possibly can about the modalities that you relate to the most, because those are going to be the languages that you speak to your patients.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, that's the key. I think, clinical proficiency, when I use those words, clinical proficiency is about you using your gifts in the service of another human being and picking the right language that speaks to both of you in that moment based on what you know is happening.
Thank you for that. I could not have a better explanation.
Good. Yeah.
Thank you.
This is the book. I think this is the one for you right now.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
You're right.
So
yeah.
I will structure my therapy to the guy who is in front of me. Thanks.
Exactly. You're welcome.
That's a real good
So,
answer. Thanks.
Josh, you have like 5 minutes for the...
Yeah, I still have 4 minutes. Yeah.
So right now I got a book. We're going to do a quick intermission on our discussion, and we're going to go into some comedy expressions from the Netherlands. Maybe they're not all funny. I have no idea. They're funny
Now
to
you've
me.
given us a clue.
Yeah.
No, I have a book, so I have to pick one, and I don't even know which one we're going to pick.
Okay.
So we're just going to open it. Josh, load in the billen hebben.
Sorry, say it again.
Load in the billen hebben.
Oh, I don't even know it.
You don't even know it? Okay.
No.
De hand
Load in the billen haben. That's easy. I know exactly what that means.
Yeah, tell me. Tell me.
It actually comes from the Confucius, and it means he who
Having-
sleeps on the floor will not
Yeah.
fall out of bed.
Oh, really?
Lord in the Billerhaben. Yeah, that's exactly what it means.
Is that German?
No, it says having lead in your buttocks. So
Yeah, right. Which is why you need to stay in bed. If you sleep on the floor, you will not fall out of bed. It makes complete sense.
yeah.
What about Josh? De Hand in eigen boezem steken.
Oh my God, there are so many difficult ones.
Matthew, we said we weren't going to talk about pornography on this one.
Boezem.
Yeah, bosom. That's what it says. Yeah, put your hand in your own décolleté. But yeah, what it means? No.
God, this one's. I picked a page over bodies parts. So
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Under-
chiropractic thing. I think.
under the duim houden.
Ah, under the
thumb.
thumb holder. Yeah, that's really easy. That's
Mhm.
holding something under the thumb.
So what would that mean to you two?
Under the thumb? Well, from a chiropractic perspective, it makes me think about Logan technique.
Yeah, but they don't know it. No.
There's room for all techniques.
Are you asking what globally somebody would
If
think
somebody
under the
says,
thumb means?
yeah, like you have that under the thumb.
Under my control.
That's exactly what it means.
Yeah.
So it's not fun this game with these two women. So
Oh, I think it's really fun actually. And what about why the handboven het hoofdhouden? You're holding your
Yeah.
hands above your head.
yeah.
What do people
does it
say
mean?
that for?
The
Yeah.
holding the hand above the head.
I'm
What
done.
would
I'm
that
out.
mean? And
Yeah, it's like,
if
yeah,
they're
I'm
talking
out.
about
Done.
holding the hand above the head of somebody else. What would that mean?
Oh, it means, what does that mean?
Holding the hand.
It means you're invading their damn space. Get out.
Or is it the opposite?
No, it's kind of the opposite. It means when Matthew does something wrong, and Adrian says, "Yeah, you did something wrong," and then I tell Adrian, "No, it's not like Matthew did something wrong because of this or that." So I'm bailing him out actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so those were our. Yeah, that's what we'll stop with the Dutch humor there.
Yeah, and I have to go, Matt.
Okay, so then you're going to miss out on the controversial topic of the day.
Yeah, sorry, man.
It was
Okay.
nice to meet you, Joshua.
Take it easy, Josh,
Yeah,
and we'll see
Very
you.
nice to meet you.
We'll see you
Yeah.
tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. And
Yeah.
thank you for answering my questions. They were very helpful, very useful. And we'll surely do that.
Great.
Goodbye.
Okay.
Bye now.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, so this is a box
Dot.
with multiple topics, and I have
Okay,
no
good.
idea. I have no
Ready.
idea what we're going to get,
Okay.
but it's always fun to get other people's perspective on controversial topics because everybody's so damn scared to speak about it.
Right.
True.
And then everybody
Okay,
thinks
bring
that
it.
we're conspiracy theorists and whatnot.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't think we're going to do this one, okay?
Okay. I'm good
Because
with that. I
this
trust
one
your
is
judgment.
this one says holistic medicine
Yeah.
versus I think we've already covered that.
It's not
Yeah, yeah.
controversial for us.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. All right.
He's got one.
The politics in the world and the lobbyists' activities in this world.
Ugh.
Oh. Right.
Ready for 2 days?
Yeah.
Apparently, the two most powerful, well, let's say they almost are tied together. The most powerful lobbyists, certainly in, I don't know about globally, but in North America and certainly the United States, are big pharma, so the pharmaceutical industry. And then you know, I don't know if you can dissociate food from drug, right? So that the sugar industry, which really is also the food industry, so these are the two biggest lobbyists. And I believe, you know, politics maybe is more of a dirty word than it's ever been, especially in America right now, because if we think about what's happening from a human rights standpoint, it's pretty ugly. And I actually don't watch a lot of news because I don't find that it does anything to elevate my energy. But it's hard to get away from what's happening in America right now in terms of social justice. And, you know, they have an election coming up, so politics is at the forefront. And even everything that's happening with this pandemic, I think a lot of what we see in the media is really driven by what's happening politically. And it may even be that the politics are driving the narrative of what's happening from a health perspective, from an intervention perspective. And so, you know, this is a very unique time in our lives. And certainly within my lifespan, there's not been a time when it's essentially, it feels like the world's been shut down. And I think that's politically motivated.
I think it's an interesting question from this perspective. You know, we are in North America. You know, read an article not that long ago that jokingly said it's the first time in history that an American passport has not been worth anything. Like, it just can't be used. And so global politics, you know, as a Canadian, you know, we align ourselves more with Europe typically than the United States, you know, but we have a love for the US. And, you know, what's great about the US is really great. What's not is can be really ugly. And in an election year in the United States, it's a global, like, everybody globally is watching what's happening because there's the assertion of power, and you're talking about a society that is really individually focused. It's not so focused on the collective. There's not, you know, there's nothing, you know, to grow up in a socialist country, you grow up mindful of a collective consciousness. And so I think, you know, American politics and what's happened with lobbyists and connections politically globally with big empires like China and Russia. And I'm not even pretending to understand economic politics or, you know, anything like that. You've got an American election that we already know there are questionable relationships that have been made. So yeah, I think that there is an unrest. I think that the United States and Americans in general, we all sort of, you know, if you're Canadian and you meet an American or they hear an American aspect of my, like, I'm realizing in Canada, everybody's presuming I'm American. And so they're all asking me about what's happening in the United States. And there's already judgment, you know, there's already a presumption, because even my language after living there for, you know, 6 years sounds more American than it does Canadian anymore. I think, you know, we do have a global amount of unrest. I think, you know, countries are very happily opening borders to the countries that they have an affiliation for. So yay, Costa Rica's opened the borders for Europeans and Canadians, but not Americans.
Yeah.
You know, Europe has done the same thing. Canadians can go. There's a free, you know, I can travel to Europe without an issue.
But I think there's still some restrictions.
There's restrictions,
Yeah.
but I just mean in general, you know, so I think that's an interesting question to ask right now, because I think we don't know who's lobbying governments.
Well, we can make lots of assumptions. Like you said, then we're called conspiracy theorists.
Yeah.
I read something the other day that I really liked that said Noah was a conspiracy theorist as well until it started to rain.
Yeah. And yeah, this topic, I think we could talk honestly for a long, long time on.
Yeah.
And what you connected with the lobbyists and the political parties, and whoever has the most money has the most power and control. And that's how the system is made right now in the US.
Yeah. Yeah.
And way back in the early 1913 or somewhere along then, when the Rockefellers tried to monopolize the medical system, and that's when it all started.
Yep.
And then they realized that if they control the food market, they can control the sickness level that people have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And everybody in the US has lost their their bravery, their courage to stand up. But a big part of the problem, I think, now is that there's no, I want to say, continuity. They all want the same thing, but there's nobody kind of gluing everybody together and getting people to realize that there's true strength is in the numbers. Because there's way more people than there are in the government, and in my opinion, a clean slate is necessary at a certain point.
It's interesting because I think it's really complicated. I mean, the percentage of the populations that show up for elections is actually really small. And so how do you collectively motivate to actually show up and have the confidence that your voice is going to be heard? And historically, I mean, if, you know, we are talking about the United States, historically, because of the way their political system is set up, you know, the popular vote, regardless of how popular, has created a complexity associated with who actually ends up being in that role of, you know, president or decision making. And so, yeah, how do you get people to care enough to realize that collectively the numbers, you know, there is a collective voice, but that's not.
But I think, you know, part of the issue is like something that makes Americans excited about being American, which is this independent freedom, is also, you know, the blessing is the curse. Yeah. Because it's hard. Then how do you take this band of independent, freedom-loving individuals and try and create a collective? Sounds a bit like chiropractic.
Yeah, right. That's it. And after the show, I'll tell you a project that we're working on about that as well, which is we're gonna also want you on for that podcast as well, because but I'm not sharing that yet to the public.
Yeah.
But yeah, with the politics, as we say, you know, if anybody is listening to this right now at this point, it's just make sure you question the authority at this point. And, you know, Monique, you question it with logic and reason and evidence and facts.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's very hard for people to even be open to the facts and to the truth when they're listening to music and they have their headphones in.
Yeah.
And I've spent years trying to convince people to understand certain truths that are happening that's really going to mess up the future. But they're not listening to me at all. So then the frustration, I'm over that phase, because then I realize, they can't hear me because they're basically focused on the political machine that's been created as kind of a television show almost.
Yeah.
And it's the political system is designed to divide people as well. And the first or the last president that wasn't a Republican or Democrat was George Washington. And and yeah, so that's enough to say about that. So they've had this bipartisan system for so long. And a while ago, my idea was, okay, how could you create this strong political third party? How can that happen? But now they got Kanye West saying he's going to run for president. And yeah, I think they're going to try to make it out to be a joke.
Well, it kind of is. It feels like a bit of a joke already, right? Because here's the other part of the problem, Matthew, and that is people don't know what to believe anymore. Like everything, nobody reads something and goes like, and it's like, yeah, that's 100% true, because there's so much fake, right? Like the internet has changed how we navigate information.
Yeah.
And everything you read now, even science, it's like I can give you one paper that says this and another paper that was published the same day that says the exact opposite thing. It's like, how do you know what to believe? And so then that really gets tied into what your values are. And then we seek out other things that confirm our values, right? Confirmation bias, and even the logarithms from the search engines that we use show us what we want to hear, what we want to see, and around we go. And it's really difficult for there to be growth and evolution when you don't accept challenge. when actually you navigate the world in a computer-driven information way that doesn't allow you to challenge yourself.
Mm-hmm. And I think that that's also why it feels so like the divisiveness or the amount of vitriol that's extended to another human being who thinks or sees things differently. I think that kind of like we're all feeling how strong and how negative and how incredibly painful that is, when you put yourself out there or give yourself a voice. It's because, it makes sense because the world has created algorithms that, that have me thinking that more people think the way I do. Because I never actually get to see the other side unless I go and actively attempt to find it. And that's actually harder to do now. It's harder to do because of what comes up on my search engine. Our three computers, the three of us could write the exact same word and there would be a different sequence that would come up to answer my search versus yours. People, I think, don't even realize that their world is being curated by an algorithm.
Yeah. And that's scary business.
Yeah.
Which is why it's important to read books.
Yes.
Read books and read things of what people said in the past. I just finished Thurman Fleet's book, Rays of the Dawn. And he wrote that back in the 30s. And all that stuff holds true today.
Yeah.
And so, people listening to this, I would say, question your politicians, ask them why. And if they don't give you a reason why, then, that's, for me, that's a good enough reason to do something about it and expose them. Because I think a true politician should be willing to leave office if he's not serving his people. And he should leave right away.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that the politics and the world, they don't want to get out of politics because the lobbyists are paying them too much money.
Yeah.
And then you get into the money game, and the system has a way to be broken peacefully, in my opinion. It's just enough people have to want to stop paying their taxes, for example.
Yep.
So, well, I think we'll go and stop there with the politics. And then at the end of every show, I do a bonus question. And it's just a curious, it's a question of curiosity about where other people's creative ideas come from and where they're going. The tagline for the Intuitive Mind Solutions is "We help people," and it's, like I said in the beginning, the principle is just based on just shining a light on people that are doing work, helping others in the world, creating that kind of community that lets other people know that we're not alone. But the world needs improvement. It needs to be better, and there needs to be things that change to make the world a better place. And I always ask people, what thing could the world use that isn't in the world at this moment? It doesn't have to be something tangible. It does have to be something tangible, but it doesn't have to be something that exists. So this can be like an invention idea, to where if enough brains come together and try to work on that, then a big change can happen. But you got to know what other people are thinking, because my brain's always going about ideas and how I would improve this or that. But there's not enough people yet working together on these type of ideas.
Yeah, I think if somebody could invent a way to take the wisdom that your being has amassed at 80 and give it to you at birth.
Well,
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know you said it had to be tangible, but I like to dream big.
Were you on that mastermind with Jesse Elder?
Yes.
Didn't he say something like,
Did he?
when he started talking about the thoughts of your past?
Oh, that
future.
Everything is happening at the same time.
So then maybe you have to think about the time you're a baby and start putting those thoughts into your.
Yeah.
But a
That's a
machine
good
to do
point.
that, a machine to do that,
If-
maybe we already have it.
Maybe we already have it. Yeah, I made some pretty dumb mistakes in my 20s. I don't know.
I have a list that is locked in a vault. So, but what I went through made who I am today, and that's how I roll now. And
100%.
it's
Yeah.
no regrets.
Yeah. I mean, my first thought, without, if I said I know I'm supposed to have a solution, but
No, maybe it's not a solution. That maybe the solution comes later. Maybe it's pointing out something that needs a solution.
yeah, I mean, the socialist, sort of the growing up in a socialist country, I would say, like, even in my 20s, I never really thought about shared wealth or the ability to, if ultimately every single day is about trying to make sure that you have a roof over your head and you're just taking care of your, core needs, then we never get to actually, we never see the realized potential in human beings that are just trying to make ends meet, So the divide of socioeconomics is so great at this point. We have so many people living so much excess and taking so much of the world's resources. What would that look like to just say, like, enough? Like, the planet has suffered enough from that excess land mass that's being taken up by a small number of people versus, and people who we never get to actually see the gifts of so many human beings that are brought into this plane because globally, the global economics has not even allowed them the opportunity to express.
Yeah. Like,
more
imagine
shared
that,
community.
like
So
that homeless singer that has a voice that nobody in the world has heard,
Right.
and could change the lives just with that voice.
And, so just sort of the basics of food and shelter globally, it's painful to think that there's people in this world starving when others are filling their lives with things that matter so much less, without any kind of mindfulness of who we are as human beings and carrying a responsibility in some way outside of filling your pocketbook,
It's a gross irresponsibility, I think, we have invested in as human beings, to have millions of people starving when there's more than enough food for every human soul.
Yeah. So it would be in that vein that I would say.
I'll just talk a little bit about a solution to that.
Mm-hmm.
I've never shared it with anybody in public, really, just with friends and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea behind what you're saying would be to support to the fullest the lowest class possible, creating that basic freedom. And then how could you find a way to create a monetary system based on service credits that would support this lower class to the fullest? And the idea would be to create those mini little homes, kind of like a big ice shack that can be very fast
like
built.
Co-housing. Yeah.
So then if you want to live in one of them, you just have to spend a set amount of hours per week building them. And then you pay your rent so then you get free living by doing that. And then you also create produce farms doing the same thing for food. And so if you work in the produce gardens and the farm for a set amount of hours per week, you earn these service credits that gets you enough food for your week. And the same thing with building. And you start there. You start with the food and shelter and making sure it's accessible to every human that you can in wherever country you're starting this program. So now you have a credit of service. And then eventually the idea would be, if that grows to the point of a higher value, you can actually create clothing stores that only accept service credits.
Right.
And you create other stores. And then let's say you have that rich millionaire that loves these clothes and say, I want to buy these clothes. Well, that store owner says, no, your money's no good here. Go out in that field and go do some work. And And when you earn enough service credits, you can buy those jeans.
Mhm.
And you could get some really unique people that make really great products that would back that up and say, no, they want to say no to the dollar, no to the currency system.
Mhm.
And then eventually you can buy the service credits with money, feeding money into that program even more. And then you'd actually deflate the value of the dollar.
Mhm.
And so that type of program could exist.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
as a beginning,
Interesting.
what
Lots to think about.
Yeah.
that
I mean,
was,
it's interesting because ultimately, you know, how much subsidy is available for lower income. And I, just say, okay, Canada. I look at how much money has been distributed and subsidized, even just this year, how much money the Canadian government has released in support of, rent subsidies and income subsidies and, in a crisis type situation. So it's not like your idea is that far off in terms of recognizing or people being able to identify where they're at. It's just at the level of where, they're starting and what their expectations of living still has that $1 million home being something we're all supposed to aspire to,
I think if you didn't have to pay any tax and you
Mhm.
didn't have to worry about anything except working in that field and working building homes for people, and then the rest of your time is free to do whatever you want,
Mhm.
and you give people newer opportunities to do things that you don't need money to enjoy what's in nature.
Mhm.
And then I think there's many programs out there that we have affiliations with that would be able to offer a program for people to do,
Mhm.
which doesn't cost them anything, essentially.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
So that was my idea. And how would you strengthen I've had that in my head for a long time, but like on a tangible way to deflate the dollar and support and strengthen the lower class, because that's where I
Right.
think the true power exists.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
But I think, yeah, it's so funny because I haven't told anybody that in so long.
Yeah.
And then with what you're asking for, that's kind of my idea that I've had for a long, long time. But
I think it could definitely work, especially in industrialized nations.
yeah. And then from then on, then people can start realizing how strong we are together, how much we have in common with each other.
Yeah.
And more people that are waking up, I feel that collective consciousness growing, and this COVID-19 thing is just made to keep us apart from each other. But what Adrian, who was on the call before, sorry, he had to let us go because his connection was really bad in Venice. But what he said is like, yeah, essentially they think they're making us weaker, but they're actually making us stronger.
Yeah.
And
There's
there's
that
gonna,
possibility for sure.
and when we can collectivize our intention, people like us, for example, with like-minded philosophies on what we want, and we're going to be a very powerful entity, a storm that they don't see coming. And that's what I think I've been preparing the last 15 years of my life for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
And I'm glad to have met you guys, and I know there's no coincidences in this world, so I'm looking forward to having you on the next podcast, which I'll discuss with you after this call.
Right.
And then hoping to work more with you in the future and being able to help support your programs even more. Even getting some of the Dutch chiropractors and maybe working more closely with the Dutch chiropractors, because there's not many of us in this country. We're maybe little under 500 for 18 million people.
Wow.
But the Dutch chiropractors are fighting amongst each other.
Right.
And like you have two different associations, and it's just like it's pointless.
Yeah.
There's no point in even having discussions or fear about your other colleagues doing the same thing you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll be picking you guys' brain on how we can help support the Dutch culture on unifying the chiropractors here because there's so few of us.
Yeah.
We're not dealing with what the US is dealing with in the numbers.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
And then if we can do this in the Netherlands, we could maybe share that with with the US to see.
Canada.
Yeah. I'm not sure about the Canada atmosphere, but I don't want to get into it much because I was with Richard Letta on an episode, and I don't even think my episode's airable
Yeah.
because of some things that I said. So
Yeah.
oops. Yeah. But anyway, I really do appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to
Thank you,
come on the
Matthew.
show, and I'm looking forward to the future working together. So we're going to say goodbye to everybody. And at the end of every show, what I usually say is stay relaxed, everybody, and safe.
Thank you.